Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer announces he is stepping down, setting up the first Supreme Court nomination for President Biden. Federal prosecutors get a guilty plea from a New Jersey political consultant in a bizarre murder-for-hire plot. Where is that investigation going next? And Russia making demands of Ukraine and the U.S. with 100,000 Russian troops massed for a fresh invasion. This is New Jersey Power and Politics. Hello and welcome to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Alex Zdan. We will get to the stories out of Washington and Europe with Senator Bob Menendez later in the show. But first, there's a new Senate president in Trenton. Union County Democratic Senator Nick Scutari took over less than 3 weeks ago after 12 unbroken years of Steve Sweeney leading the Senate. Senate President Scutari, welcome back to the show for your first time as Senate President.
Thank you. Great to be here. Appreciate that.
So Republicans and even some Democrats in the last month have expressed interest in maybe curbing some of the governor's executive pandemic power, reasserting the legislature as a co-equal branch. Do you agree with those sentiments?
Well, the legislature was the one that created that power to begin with, so we're already an equal partner in that, and we can curtail it. There's been some talks about that, but I think we're coming to the end, and I think the governor would agree with that. By the time we even reconvene, the 30 days that he pronounced will probably be expired. But there's certainly discussions on that because the legislature does need to be at the table because we're the people's representatives.
And is there sentiment, though, are you going to wait and see how this public health emergency plays out, or are you going to act before that?
We'll probably wait and see, but we're having ongoing discussions. We won't act unilaterally with my partners in the legislature's leadership team that I've assembled to discuss that. I know that there's been active discussions on both sides of the aisle and even in the assembly, but since we believe this is coming to the end, we're hopeful that any actions that we have to take won't seem like they're reactionary. They'll be well thought out and be looking forward rather than backward.
Similarly, there's been calls, especially from Republicans like Senator Joe Panaccio, for over 18 months about an investigation by the Senate into the administration's handling of the pandemic, including nursing homes and veterans homes. Would you give something like that the green light?
I can't say I'd give it the green light, but I certainly it's worthy of a discussion. But, you know, playing Monday morning quarterback with an issue that's never befallen us before is sometimes something that we don't want to do. Working with the administration, I think we can get the answers to those questions without a formalized hearing. But if we believe that that's necessary, we'll give it consideration. But I think overall, the grade that the governor gets on the handling of the pandemic is certainly more than passing. We've one of the highest vaccination states in the nation. I think one of the things that the governor's done best is safeguarding people in New Jersey from this pandemic. And as we see it coming to an end, and I truly believe that it is, and the latest variant, although highly transmissible, has not been deadly, we see that all admissions are going down, transmission rates are going down, and we're going to be coming out of this, and we're getting back to normalcy. And I steadfastly agree that we're going back to normalcy. The Senate has been meeting in person since almost the very beginning, the very first possible time that we could come back in person. Steve Sweeney brought us back in person, and I'm going to certainly continue that.
Now, this week there were also 4 bills that got their first hearing regarding the issue of affordability. How are you going to try and make New Jersey more affordable? Because it's a pretty high task.
It is a tough task, but this is the beginning of a road. I think we've done things in the past that haven't gotten the notoriety that they should. But of course, New Jersey's affordability is number one in in what I want to see done. There's no mistake that our first committee hearing that I authorized was on the singular topic of affordability and property tax relief, increasing the distribution to the municipalities from the energy tax receipts so they can give property tax relief over the next 5 years, increasing the rental assistance in terms of the ability for renters to write off their taxes from 18 to 30%. These are not small items. These are big property tax relief items. And if they move forward and the assembly joins us in this and the governor signs it, this is going to provide real property tax relief down the line, and not just immediate, but also over time.
When you're talking affordability, when you're at least expressing an openness to maybe curbing some of the governor's pandemic powers, are you heeding the message from the voters in November who elected folks like Ed Durr?
Well, I don't know if I'm heeding that. This is things that I believe in. I've believed in this for a long period of time, and where we can work across the aisle with our counterparts in the Republican Party, we're definitely going to do that. That's what I want to be, as a consensus builder. I've got a great partner in the Republican side with the minority leader, and we want to work together to do the people's business. And that's what this is all about: is giving people what they need, what they want, and what they deserve. And that is working together on the problems that face them, and providing real property tax relief and real cost-effective relief, making government work better, making government work for them more efficiently. And I don't think that's a Democratic or a Republican idea. That's what government officials are there to do. That's what I intend on doing. If that relates to what people have said in the voting booth, then I'm glad that it does.
All right. Senate President Nick Scutari, Democrat of Union County, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The Jersey political world is still in a state of shock after a political consultant admitted his role in a murder-for-hire plot this week. Sean Cattle used 2 hitmen to murder former Jersey City Council candidate Michael Gualtieri in 2014, and that bombshell is leading to calls for a new investigation in one of the state's biggest political killing mysteries. Matt Friedman is a reporter for Politico New Jersey. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Alex.
Who is Sean Cattle, and what is his reputation in Jersey politics?
Sean Cattle is a political consultant, a Democrat, most closely associated with a former state senator, Ray Lesniak. Cattle's reputation is as not a very good guy, but an effective political operative. He's had some scandals in his past. He was never charged with anything, but in Texas, there were some allegations about fraudulent voter registrations that he was allegedly involved with. And here in Jersey, over a few years, I've written pretty extensively about a very, very, very shady network of super PACs that Cattle ran with another guy, which were, a lot of them were just set up basically to create dark money, to channel dark money into political races.
And to be fair, and this is not a partisan thing, most of the politicians, I think all the politicians Cattle worked in connection with, were Democrats. We're talking former Senator Lesniak, working for Senator Menendez, Democrats in Sussex County. That's fair, right?
Yeah, over many, many years. There might have been a Republican here and there, and maybe some people unaffiliated. But yes, for the most part, he is a Democratic political consultant. Yeah.
Now, what is the connection, if we know this yet, between Gualtieri and Cattle, Gualtieri being the victim in this May 2014 homicide by these 2 hitmen?
Well, what we knew is, according to some Hudson County politicians, I believe it was Bill O'Day, who I'm trying to remember, a commissioner there
in Hudson County.
Yeah, had said that Gualtieri had worked for Cattle's firm, Arcady, and to the extent I know, talking to people, they had worked together on some elections there.
But as far as we know, the feds have not put out a potential motive for the killing that happened.
The feds have been very careful to limit the amount of information about this case that's out there. What is clear and was made explicit, in case you didn't want to read between the lines, by the Star Ledger yesterday, is that Sean Cattle is cooperating with something.
Right.
The fact is, the guy admitted to hiring people to murder someone, and he's still at home. That's not typical. He's killed someone effectively. So he's clearly cooperating with federal authorities, and that means there's a lot more to this story. They've been extraordinarily careful about how much information they're putting out. They've kept it very low key. So regardless of how this turns out, I think it's pretty safe to say that it's going to be bigger than it is right now.
Right, and sort of the second bombshell, the second detonation went off on Friday. We look back to 2014, so 4 or 5 months after Gualtieri was killed. John Sheridan, former Commissioner of Transportation, found dead in his burning home alongside the body of his wife. And on Friday, you reported that John Sheridan's son, Mark, is asking federal and state prosecutors to take a look at potential connections. Why does Mark Sheridan believe there could be a connection between this murder-for-hire scheme that victimized Gualtieri and what happened to his parents?
Frankly, there's a lot of circumstances that are raise a lot of questions about this in terms of time frame and potentially even evidence. What we know is that one of the men, he hasn't been formally charged yet to my knowledge, but a man who's been named in court as one of the 2 hitmen, George Brancensis, forgive my pronunciation of his last name, was arrested on September 29th for a bank robbery he had committed a few days earlier. His arrest was in Connecticut, and so was the bank robbery. The Sheridans were killed on, the Sheridans' bodies were found on September 28th.
Of 2014, this is all 2014.
Of 2014, that's right. And there was a missing knife, apparently, or there has at least been some talk about a missing knife from the Sheridans' home. They were both stabbed to death, and a fire was set.
In the house, in the bedroom at least. That wasn't a very good fire. It wasn't a very expert fire. And there's similarities too, because Galdieri's apartment was also set on fire.
That's correct. Now, they believe that one of the weapons used, and again, their deaths have not been ruled anything at this point. We know Joyce Sheridan was killed. Initially, prosecutors had said it was a murder-suicide by John Sheridan, but that's since been walked back. And the Sheridans have always held that there's no reason to believe their father could have done that. And frankly, there hasn't been any evidence for that.
And Mark Sheridan wrote in his letter, he wrote to the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office, "Your office has all but laughed at my family's suggestion that my parents' death were anything other than a murder-suicide."
Yeah, and the key thing here is that there may have been a knife missing from that scene, the Sheridans. And when one of these hitmen, who we know how alleged hitmen, since he hasn't been charged yet, that we now know has been named as being involved in this murder, the day after their deaths was arrested in Connecticut, not too far. We're talking maybe an hour and a half drive from where the Sheridans were found. He had a kitchen knife, a long-bladed kitchen knife in his car.
It certainly raises questions. It's worth an ask. Matt Friedman of Politico, New Jersey, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
As for you, stay with us. There's a lot more coming up. This is New Jersey Power and Politics. Welcome back to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Alex Zdan. Congress is preparing a devastating round of sanctions against Russia if President Vladimir Putin goes ahead with the new invasion of Ukraine. The Russians seized the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea in 2014, and Russian-backed separatists control parts of eastern Ukraine. But a full-scale Russian invasion could lead to the bloodiest fighting in Europe since World War II. Here to talk about that and more is New Jersey's senior senator, Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. He is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Welcome back to the show, Senator.
Good to be with you, Alex.
So there's always a difference between what Putin says he wants and what he actually wants. What do you believe Putin actually wants out of this confrontation?
Well, I think if you look at Putin's speeches and his positions in the past, his biggest lament is the dissolution of what was the Soviet Union. His biggest desire is to recreate as much of what was the Soviet Union again. That's why Ukraine is both the object of his desire, but also a tool that he uses against the United States and the West. And so whether it is about what he feels is the encroachment of NATO on the borders of Russia, or whether it is in recreating that, either way, he has already achieved a lot. The world is riveted on Putin and Russia. He is getting Europe, NATO, and the United States to respond to some of his security concerns. And so it remains to be seen. But what we do know is that President Biden and the West have made it very clear that we do not seek conflict with Russia, that we believe there are diplomatic avenues to meet any of the legitimate concerns that Russia might have, that there's also reciprocity expected of Russia if some of those concerns might be met. But we will wait and see what Putin ultimately wants to do. The question is, what do we do to ensure, or to at least try to change Putin's calculus about any invasion of Ukraine?
Do you believe that whatever the United States does, whatever you think it should it be fine-tuned to the severity of a Russian invasion, or would any sort of further invasion cross a red line for you?
An invasion is an invasion. And we should learn from the lessons of 2008 when NATO, under President Bush, offered the possibility to both the country of Georgia and Ukraine about potentially entering NATO in the future. We saw that Russia invaded Georgia. And then in 2014, when Ukraine started making overtures to the European Union, he invaded and took Crimea. and the muted response of the world in 2008 and 2014 just sent a message to Putin that you can do this largely without great consequences. So invasion is invasion, regardless of the size of it, and it must be swift and strong in terms of our response.
All right, at home this week, Justice Stephen Breyer announced his retirement. What kind of qualities do you want in the next Supreme Court justice?
I want someone who will ultimately have the intellectual capacity, the disposition, the deference to the Constitution, the belief that precedent matters as elements of what a great Supreme Court justice is. And what we have seen under the court in terms of recent appointees is that there isn't a deference to precedent. When we look at the potential challenge to Roe versus Wade and overturning what the Supreme Court has for decades said is the law of the land, and now working to undermine it and to change it, that's not about observing precedent, that's about undermining it. And so to have confidence in the court when the court makes a decision, you have to believe that that decision is not just for the moment, but for the long term. And so we have a court presently that under recent appointees is in the midst of changing the very fundamental nature of the precedent of Supreme Court rulings. I want to see a nominee who actually will observe precedent as a critical element of the Supreme Court.
And also the president saying that he wants to divvy up Build Back Better into separate pieces and to try to pass them individually. So for you, which piece is the most important? Which is most essential that you want to see passed?
Well, look, there's several elements. I supported Build Back Better as it was. Unfortunately, our colleagues, two of our colleagues, cannot. Look, I think we have to deal with the challenge that mothers and families are having in educating their children in the midst of a pandemic and the sense that they're falling behind. So some of the provisions of Build Back Better dealt directly with that. I think we have to deal with the challenges of families facing higher costs because of the supply chain issues. Some of the elements of Build Back Better, both in tax cuts, on the child tax credit, on child care, on elder care, help families meet that challenge. And then, of course, I believe that the state and local property tax deduction that we lost when President Trump gave over $1 trillion to the wealthiest people in the country, we need to restore the state and local property tax so that families can actually get some relief in the tax deductions that are necessary for them to be able to maintain their home, which is where their family ultimately resides.
Senator, earlier this month, your son, Rob, announced he's running for Congress. What are his qualifications to serve in the House of Representatives?
Well, I've seen, his service in so many ways, most recently as a Port Authority commissioner, helping create development that creates jobs and economic opportunity. His training as a lawyer for, I think it's over a decade and a half already, and his understanding of the marketplace, the good aspects of it, the bad aspects of it, his experience in legal training and mergers and acquisitions. I think his passion in transportation issues, which are critical to the 8th Congressional District in the region. And as someone who grew up in the 8th District, knows its people, knows its struggles, and has lived it from going to a public preschool to public schools, to schools in Hoboken, as well as in Union City, and raising his family in Jersey City. I think he has the totality of experiences and insights that can help the people of the 8th District ultimately realize their hopes and dreams and aspirations.
All right, U.S. Senator Bob Menendez, thanks very much for joining us.
Great to be with you.
As for you, stay with us. There's much more to come on New Jersey Power and Politics. Welcome back to New Jersey Power and Politics. I'm Alex Zdan. $7 million is heading to Paterson to pay for gun detection technology in that city. Governor Murphy making the announcement alongside Paterson Mayor Andre Saya Thursday. Another $8 million will be going towards grassroots community groups that work to resolve arguments. The announcement coming the week after NYPD officers Jason Rivera and Wilbert Mora were shot and killed in Harlem while responding to a domestic violence call. Rivera's funeral was held Friday at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Well, frustration on all sides as New Jersey misses another deadline for recreational marijuana sales. The state's Cannabis Regulatory Commission had planned to have marijuana for sale by February 22nd of this year, but at Thursday's commission meeting, the executive director said there are major deficiencies in some of the applications for medicinal marijuana dispensaries, and those dispensaries must also be able to serve recreational customers.
There's a level of frustration here at the commission, certainly with me, certainly with staff and others, that, there's an effort to pressure us to move forward in a way that's not compliant with the law. And that's just simply not going to happen.
But the head of the industry group, the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association, says he remains optimistic the public will be able to buy legal recreational pot by the end of June. That's going to do it for this week. I'm Alex Zdan. Thanks for watching New Jersey Power and Politics. We will see you next time.